Welcome, students. Happy that you're here with us. This ensemble is made up of students from the Jackie McLean Institute of Jazz from the University of Hartford in Connecticut, and we're officially known as the Newport Jazz Assembly Group. I'd like to thank Newport Festivals Foundations and George Wayne. Today's topic or theme is what is jazz? What is jazz? It is an American art form that has many ingredients and sources. Those sources are Africa, Europe, and America. It is a music that's based on the African American tradition and culture. Jazz was born in New Orleans, Louisiana. Hopefully, when you have time, you can look up musicians like King Oliver and Louis Armstrong. They are the basis and the beginning for this incredible art form. Jazz music has many eras. Today, we will focus on 3 eras: swing, bebop, and modal. As we start with the swing era, we'd like to highlight and acknowledge a great musician and composer, George Gershwin. Jazz is unique for many reasons, but one important reason is soloing, which involves melody, harmony, and rhythm. The soloists use harmony and/or chords to solo over. George Gershwin, a Broadway composer, wrote a beautiful composition that has been well played by jazz musicians. It is entitled, I Got Rhythm. We jazz musicians use it in the way to compose songs, and we call it rhythm changes. Along with the help of our pianist, David Winters, we would like to give you an example of AABA and this particular song, I Got Rhythm. What is AABA? AABA is a theme again, a different theme, and the first theme. Could you play the first A, David? Thank you. That was the first A. We'd like to hear the second A, which would be the same theme. Thank you. Now we're going to hear the B theme, which is a different theme. Great. Now we're going to hear A again. Thank you for your help, David, with AABA. Now, in the spirit of I Got Rhythm, we'd like to play a piece written by the incredible Lester Young and his composition entitled Lester Leaps In. Thank you very much. That was Lester's Leaped In by the great Lester Young. That featured Nate Jennings at the tenor saxophone, Jeremy Galloway at the guitar, and Conway Campbell Jr. at the bass. Now we'd like to talk with you about the Bebop era, which occurred in the late 40s through the mid to late 50s. There were many incredible artists during this period, which included Dizzy Gillespie, Dexter Gordon, Bud Powell, Thelonious Monk, and last but not least, Charlie Parker. Charlie Parker was the Pied Piper of this era, and we'd like to highlight him by playing one of his compositions, and we hopefully enjoy Confirmation. Thank you very much for Charlie Parker's confirmation. That featured Sean Flynn at the alto saxophone, David Winters at the piano, and Akeem Hobson at the drums. The last era we'd like to highlight today is the modal era in jazz, which occurred from the late 50s through the mid 60s. Miles Davis wrote probably the definitive composition during this time, which is called So What? And with Jeremy Galloway's help on guitars, we'd like to show you how modal jazz is performed with the use of the Dorian scale. In this instance, Jeremy, could you play a D Dorian scale? The other scale used in this composition is an E-flat Dorian scale. These scales, with other devices, allow us to play the composition you're about to hear, Miles Davis's So What? Thank you very much. That was Miles Davis's So What. That features Sarah Uyar at the trumpet, Nate Jennings at the tenor saxophone, Sean Flynn at the alto saxophone, Jeremy Galloway at the guitar, and David Winters at the piano. Now, I think, young people out there, that you might have some questions, and I've come up with some questions I think that you would ask. Sarah Uyar at the trumpet, our question to you is, how often do you rehearse as a band?
So as a band, we have rehearsed a couple of times. The thing about being a jazz musician is that we have a set of repertoire that we're expected to know ahead of time. So when we get to rehearsal, we already know all the music. The point of the rehearsal is more so to figure out the arrangements, such as who's going to be soloing, how we want to begin and end tunes, and to figure out style and phrasing so that we can perform as a cohesive unit.
Thank you, Sarah. This next question is for Nate Jennings, our tenor saxophonist, and for Akeem Hobson, our drummer. And the question is, how often do you practice per day?
I currently practice about 3 to 6 hours a day, sometimes more or less depending on my schedule. For a young musician, that can seem like it's a lot of time and maybe be a bit overwhelming. So what I would recommend is just to practice your instrument every day, even if it's just for 20 to 30 minutes.
I also practice about 3 to 4 hours a day. I usually like to break it up, make sure I get some warm-ups in, and also get in pretty much everything I need to do to make sure I'm getting better as a musician. But it's always important to set aside time that I can just be creative and work on what I want to, with having a busy schedule such as school and sometimes work and gigging. So you got to eat your Wheaties, but you got to have fun.
Thank you, Nate Jennings. Thank you, Akeem Hobson. The next question is for Conway Campbell, our bassist, David Winters, our pianist, and for Jeremy Galloway, our guitarist. And the question is, how did you become aware of jazz?
I first picked up the guitar at the age of 10. I picked up my dad's acoustic guitar. Couldn't play the thing, but I, from then on, wanted to be an electric guitarist and was really drawn to like classic rock stuff, like something you would hear on like Guitar Hero or something. And later on, it wasn't until later on, till like high school, that I started being exposed to some jazz musicians such as Bill Evans, John Coltrane, and Grant Green. And from there, I fell in love with it, and it became my creative outlet from then on.
When I was in the 7th grade, my parents took me to the local college where my dad worked at to see a jazz concert. My siblings were asked to go, but they didn't want to. I was the only one that went. And I enjoyed the music so much that I actually asked the instructor if I could join the ensemble after the concert was done, and I was able to. And I showed up the next Monday for rehearsal and everything.
Well, I began playing piano at age 10, and in the 6th grade at age 12, I joined my middle school's jazz band. And while funnily enough, we didn't actually play many jazz charts, the ones that we did fascinated me with, the sort of thick, lush harmony with upper extensions. So it sort of inspired me to begin checking out jazz music on my own. So I began listening to artists such as Charlie Parker, Art Tatum, Oscar Peterson, Bill Evans, and Thelonious Monk, and that got me started in developing an interest in jazz.
Thank you, Conway. Thank you, David. Thank you, Jeremy. This next question is for Sean Flynn, our alto saxophonist, and the question is, how are you able to play without sheet music?
Yeah, that's a really good question. The answer is actually similar to what Sarah had mentioned earlier. We have a repertoire in jazz. As we learn in school, we're expected to know certain tunes. So when we learn the songs, and a lot of them have that AABA form that we talked about before, we're able to come together as a band and choose songs that we already know, and we can kind of just call it. And then the rehearsals from there is where we settle who's going to solo and that kind of a thing. But when we learn our songs, we're going to learn them from usually by the records or the CDs. We have all kinds of media platforms now where we listen to the music and we learn it by ear rather than reading. It's just a really good way to remember it faster, and you'd be surprised how quickly your ears develop and how quickly you can learn the music when you do it by ear. So we learn it by ear, then we come together and we're ready to play it.
Thank you, Sean. For the last aspect of our performance today, we'd like each student to give you one sentence of advice in their own words.
My advice to young aspiring musicians is check out as many different genres of music as you can and don't get discouraged. It can be frustrating practicing and it could take a long time to learn some things, but it's worth it in the end. So keep practicing and make some music.
My one advice to young musicians would be, if you're very serious about the music, would be to get a private teacher and someone who can really show you what's going on your instrument so you can get inside and be able to play it accurately and with a lot of professionalism.
My advice to kids out there who want to get into music is never stop being creative and asking questions why about the music, because you never know what you might come up with, and never be discouraged by what you're hearing. Take the time and explore it.
My advice to young jazz musicians is that it's okay to be the worst player in the room, because if you surround yourself with people who are better than you, then you're going to learn a lot, and you put in the hard work, and soon enough you're going to realize that you're not the worst player anymore.
So my one piece of advice, if you want to become a musician, especially a jazz musician, is to develop a sound first. And you do that, I mean, for me, it was just being in my basement and playing along with whatever I could find. I mean, whether it was a rock beat, just jazz standards, whatever music you like. It's just really important that you hear who played the music before you, and you get your influence from all kinds of different musicians around you. That's how you develop your own voice. So when you hear a John Coltrane, you know who that is as soon as you start hearing him play. You want to develop that sound for yourself as you become a professional musician.
My advice to aspiring young musicians is to put together a practice routine that you can do every day. Even if it's not much, that repeated reinforcement will add up over time. Definitely don't overwhelm yourself with too much daily practice, because the tedium of your practice is much more important than the quantity.
My advice to young musicians, I would say one of the most important things you can do is listen a lot. Listen to artists you like and learn a little bit about the history of their lives, who they were, when they were born, when they died, or if they're still alive, and the styles of music they contributed to.
Thank you very much. It's been our honor to be with you, and we hope you enjoyed it. Good luck and stay safe.